It is another edition of the Juice on the Cuse podcast here on the Believe in Rivals Networks. Wes Cheng alongside Andrew Barth. Thanks as always for joining us on this Monday, July 15, 2024. Plenty to talk about on today's show. We begin today with recruiting. We are in the thick of the July dead period, but that does not mean that we have not been checking in on Syracuse prospects. 2Tenths in Western Pennsylvania hosted their top 150 camp on Sunday. Andrew, you were there. You got to speak with roughly 10 Syracuse recruits and take in the rest of the action. What were your biggest takeaways?
So I would say my biggest takeaways were probably, besides the fact that there's an unbelievable amount of talent in Western Pennsylvania, and there's a reason why you're seeing Fran Brown and staff here all the time now. That definitely was a mistake by Coach Dino, not really trying to come in here. Pitt football is not doing too great at the moment. Locals are a little sour on them after last season's debacle. So it makes sense that someone like Fran Brown with the momentum is now kind of coming into the area and trying to take what he can get. And there was a ton of talent. For me, I would say the big news realistically for me was seeing Chris Black for the first time. I'd been hearing about him since he was in 8th grade. D. Brown, who runs 2Tenths, great guy, Aaron Donald's trainer. He's a trainer to the stars, does tons of NFL players, yet gives back to the community as much as possible, works with all the high school kids. He told me about Chris Black when he was last summer, so going into 8th grade. And Syracuse offers him this year as an 8th grader. And so he hasn't even started high school yet. And he just was dominant. It was all over the field, intercepting people. He looked like a blue chip recruit, and he hasn't even stepped into a high school yet. It was pretty absurd. The other thing that really stood out to me probably was Will Gorman's progression. I saw him in the spring, and he looked good. He definitely looked like a Division I prospect. But yesterday, he looked like a Power 5 prospect. He was coming off. He played mostly on the right side of the ball. He had Aaron Donald coaching him up, and no one could stop him. There were a couple kids who were 6'4", 380 pounds, and he was just blowing by him like it was nothing. It was pretty remarkable, and I can't see many coaches laying in the weeds for him for very long. And I think the fact that Syracuse kind of was able to recognize his talent relatively early and get him on campus is going to give them a big advantage if they do decide to go down the route to get him.
Yeah, and Will Gorman, I think, is one of the more interesting guys that I've spoken with, just in terms of the type of person he is. Because if you look at his academic transcript, really diverse academic background, he's actually taking Swahili as a language, just to offer you some insight into the type of student athlete that he is. And I was also a little surprised he's only drawing mid-major interest at the moment. But again, you mentioned it, he has visited Syracuse earlier in the year. I think he's got a chance to really turn into a high major prospect this season. And, one other thing, kind of to your point about talking about Chris Black, is I know you talk with Khalil Taylor, who also holds a Syracuse offer. And one of the things he said was that he appreciated about Syracuse is that they're identifying young talent early and extending them offers. And they're starting them off in 8th and 9th grade with offers and establishing that connection right away. A lot of these people descend into Western Pennsylvania and offer some of the more established, 10th, 11th grade, right when they're about to hit the peak of the recruitment. Good for Fran Brown for starting earlier. But, one of the guys that I also wanted to check in with you about, now I know he didn't play and he was only there for the media session, but that's Larry Moon, 2027 defensive back, very highly touted prospect out of Western Pennsylvania. He holds over a dozen offers from Michigan State, Miami, Nebraska, Penn State, also Syracuse. He visited Syracuse earlier in the year. So what did you think about your conversation with him, and where does Syracuse stand with his recruitment?
I think Larry's pretty high on Syracuse, but I think he's willing to listen to anyone right now. He's still super young. I saw him play last year. He played for Central Catholic. I actually was there with Adam Friedman from Rivals, and he started as a true freshman on a very good team. But this year he's going to be playing at Aliquippa, which is another powerhouse of a school. I think they have the most alumni in the NFL Hall of Fame. Darrell Revis. I mean, the list goes on and on. But yeah, he's a very humble kid. You could tell he's somebody who, he's working hard. He's not someone who takes days off. I was surprised, to be honest, that he was there not working out. It's kind of shocking. There was a bunch of kids who were big time recruits per se that decided to show up to the camp but not participate in the camp, and I think that rubs some people the wrong way. I mean, from my perspective, if you're getting the opportunity to work with Aaron Donald, a trainer that's probably produced, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of athletes. DeMar Hamlin was there, working with corners. I mean, this is a man, Dane Jackson worked with Dwayne, Quan Brisker, Miles Sanders. I mean, the list is unbelievable. People now fly him around the country. And to have this opportunity to work with those guys and turn it down because maybe you don't want to tweak your ankle or something, I don't know. This is football. I mean, you don't want to tweak your ankle, go play tennis. That's what I played. I played tennis because I was scared to tweak my ankle. So I'm not passing judgment. But yeah, Larry was there. Larry's going to Aliquippa. I know Aliquippa was not one of the schools that mandated their kids to not play. So he might be dealing with just a little something or needed a day off. But Larry is a very humble guy. He is someone who I think any locker room would benefit from. And I think that speaks volumes for how young he is and how many offers he has, that he's not someone who, you kind of have trouble talking to, or they're, difficult to be around. I mean, he's a talent. The offers are there. They show that. I've seen him play in person. He looks great. And like I said, he's just a humble guy. And you take those three things in. And I think Larry Moon's stock is high, and I think it deserves to be. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level. And he's still got 3 more years of high school, and he's playing at Aliquippa. I mean, they just had MJ Devonshire from Pitt get drafted. Like I said before, Revis. The list goes on and on. He's going to get the coaching he needs. He's working with D. Brown, who's producing NFL talent. He's only going to get better. And I think that if Fran Brown and staff can really kind of get in there and work with him, I think there's a chance Syracuse can make it work. I know he told me, I believe, that Fran Brown is one of the people even reaching out to him a lot, which I was pretty surprised by, because a lot of times in the past, you hear position coaches, or you hear, I'm hearing from this area scout, or I'm hearing from this. But a lot of the top prospects and the guys we interviewed, a lot of them were talking directly with Fran Brown on top of position coaches, on top of area scouts, including Jance Henry Jr., Khalil Taylor. And those are just kind of off the top of my head. And those guys look great as well. I mean, he clearly has an eye for talent. You also have a Saw Hurd. He probably has that benefit of having his brother right now on campus. But Fran Brown seems to have a lot of respect right now in New Jersey. And I'm not betting against him when it comes to getting a good player from New Jersey. And, I think Saw Hurd, I met his dad. His dad was a great guy. Saw was super duper level-headed, cool, and he would be another guy that you can tell is primed and ready to go. He looked amazing. He's listed as an athlete on our database, but he played with the linebackers and just looked astounding. Won MVP for his group. He's going to be a big-time talent, and the fact that he's from South Jersey, I think, only makes his odds of going to Syracuse probably pretty pretty good if Fran Brown plays his cards right.
So, Andrew, before we close out the 2/10ths recap, is there a guy that you saw that Syracuse and other high majors should really be recruiting that's on the cusp of seeing his recruitment blow up?
That's a good question. I would say probably Carter Bonner. We talked about him last year. He has an offer from Pitt. He's a big time player, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Doran Dickerson back in the day at Pitt, and then he went on to the Bills. He's someone who he can play. He plays corner, but he has the size to easily transition to safety, potentially even outside linebacker. He has this ability also on the offensive side where he's clearly just a genetic freak, in my opinion. And he has this ability already to high point the football when he's playing wide receiver. And that's a difficult thing to teach. You can teach speed, you can teach catching, but that ability to find the ball when it's above your head and get up to its highest point and pull it down is pretty impressive. And he just transferred from Amani to Penn Hills. Penn Hills is his local high school, which is now kind of a little more well-known because of Aaron Donald and recent Pitt commit Julian Duggar. So they have been producing Power 5 talent. And I think the sky's the limit for Carter as well. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be in that crop of top 2027 guys with the Jance Henrys, the Khalil Taylors, the Larry Moons, the Kamon Spells. It's 2027 is a ridiculous class. There's kids with Power 5 offers who I didn't even get to talking to, like Nelson Coleman at Seton LaSalle, who's Khalil Taylor's teammate, also plays in the secondary. He already has a West Virginia offer, and he's only played one freshman year. So there's a ton of talent in Pittsburgh, and I'd imagine Syracuse will be visiting very frequently in the near future when it comes to that class.
So, Andrew, before we get out of here for this segment, there are plenty of other recruits that you spoke with that had Syracuse offers or Syracuse interests. Caden Davis, quarterback. You mentioned Hurd, the younger brother of the current Syracuse defensive lineman, Chris Black Jr., who you're obviously really high on. So it's great to hear that. You spoke to all of them. We're going to have more on the Juice Online later this week. So certainly looking forward to hearing more about that. And we are going to take a quick break, and we got some more football thoughts on the other side of the break. This is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. So this is the Bet Online Read, your number one source for sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right up to the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE for a 50% bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. That's promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Bet online, the game starts here. Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng alongside Andrew Barth. Andrew, I wanted to follow up on our 2/10ths segment from earlier. And I know there's a quarterback that really impressed you that I've also spoken with in the past. So talk to me about the quarterback and what you saw.
So, yeah, I would say one of the quarterbacks that really impressed me was Anthony Smith, class of 2028. So he also, kind of like Chris Black, hasn't hit the field yet. And he just stood out. Him and Caden Davis both, they were just spinning the ball, and they made their presence known, which was pretty impressive for how young both of them are. I feel like a lot of quarterbacks you see, they're still growing into their body. They're still working on their mechanics. And to see someone in the class of 2028 who, is throwing the ball that well, who's hitting back shoulders, who's leading receivers, kids that are maybe 3 years older than them, and he looks like he belongs on the field right next to them. I find that to be super impressive. And I think that I know I wasn't able to talk to him. I believe you have, though. And he seems super high on Syracuse. So I think Syracuse might have found another gem pretty early on in the cycle.
Yeah, so he's been up to Syracuse twice already, and you mentioned him only being a 2028, but he was at spring practice in April. He was back on Syracuse in June for elite camp. So this is someone that Syracuse, as you said, has identified really early, and he is high on Syracuse. He mentioned he thought the world of camp. He really liked the way that Fran Brown both recruited and ran his practices. So, kudos to Syracuse for finding Anthony Smith, and I think to your point, he's going to be a really great prospect. And the way that he's developed, even in just the year that I've been speaking to him, has been really impressive. So I'm glad you got to take a look and see how impressive he is in person. Andrew, I wanted to close the show on this recruiting note, which is one of the things that Fran Brown said when he got to Syracuse was that he was going to go after New York recruits and keep them at home. And he's been good on his word so far. So last week, Jaden Mann from Cardinal Hayes in the Bronx, school that you have a great relationship with in your own family, he commits to Syracuse. He's the 12th ranked New York prospect, according to Rivals. Well, he's not the only one in that group. So Darren Williams, number 2, Quante Gillians, number 4, number 5, Jordan Gibbs, number 7, Javon Lawrence, number 10, Rich Beelan, number 13, Matthew Hahn, number 14, Dante Bashai, number 15, Kadir Shepard. They're all committed to Syracuse. So that's 9 out of the top 15. And Blake Beelan, the number 9 recruit in the state, is undecided, but has Syracuse among his finalists. Look for a battle between Syracuse and the University of Virginia there. So a good chance for Syracuse to land 2/3 of New York's top 15 prospects, according to Rivals. That's something that, again, Fran Brown promised when he got here, and he's held true to that so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a couple kids I talked to who even talked about how Fran Brown had even told them, these are Western Pennsylvania kids, that he is focusing on, and this is apparently his words, his own backyard first. So, when it comes to, if you are at Christian Brothers Academy, or you're up in Buffalo, Rochester, all the way down now to the Bronx, Fran Brown's coming. He's done losing these recruiting battles to Rutgers, Boston College, Pitt. I mean, you look at some of the guys Pitt have gotten over the years from North Jersey, even New York. You look at someone like Izzy, who's now with the Jets. He went to Lincoln High School in Brooklyn. It's hard to imagine that he wouldn't have gone to Syracuse if it was happening today, considering Fran flipped Yassine Willis, who was committed to Pitt before he got hired. So, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about. It's hard not to think that Blake Beelan won't be suited up in the orange. I believe Rich is his cousin.
Twin brother.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was his cousin. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, they're not really the same frame, but but yeah, no, they're we saw Rich at the Rivals camp. I believe it was not last summer, or was it 2 summers ago? And I was shocked that he didn't have the big time offers yet. But even then, Syracuse was on him, and Syracuse kind of stuck with him. And he had a standout senior year. I believe Cardinal Hayes plays at Columbia University, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they have like a field on. I don't think they really have much of a campus per se. And yeah, he looked great all year. They were a really fun team to watch. And then you factor in that Elijah Chapa-Moore is also from Cardinal Hayes. That
2024 shooting guard commit. Yeah, Elijah Moore is.
They might just change their name to the Syracuse, Cardinal Hayes or something.
Well, that's it for us. For Andrew Barth, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast presented by Bet Online and Believe, and we will see you next time.